Hey, Lauren.
Hey, Devin. How are you?
Great.
Good.
Welcome back, everybody. This is part 2
Yep.
on selling your business. We think there's probably going to be 4 parts.
Yeah.
So this is part 2. We just talked before about, kind of understanding your business itself, the reality of like really looking yourself in the mirror and understanding what kind of business you have, and then who the potential buyers would be and how important that is, so that when you go into the process, you kind of, you know what the end game is likely going to look like. So you can make sure that you're training in your company. The analogy we're using is like, are you training for a sprint, marathon, it's doing 800, or you're doing, 10K, what are you doing? Right. And so I think that's what we focused on in the last episode. And this one, we want to talk about like, hey, great. I think this is a path I'm going to go down. How do I maximize value?
Yeah. Yeah. So last episode, I learned that there's a lot more involved to selling your business than we even realize. And it's not like selling your home or selling your car.
Yeah.
So, Devin, to get started, actually, we talked about adding value to your business. The first thing I want to ask you is like, how long of a process is this? Like, when should a business owner start this part of it?
Yeah, I think it's important to always have that perspective in mind. We talked about this in the last episode, having the perspective in mind that eventually you're going to exit the company. How you exit it is kind of up to you, right? Like if you exit it going into the grave, if you exit it because you can't do it anymore and it's kind of a fire sale, or you exit it on your terms. But you're going to exit it. So I think you always need to have that perspective. However, once you start to say, I'm getting ready to exit, that's when we're going to really start, cleaning up and maximizing, dealing with the, maybe issues they hadn't dealt with before, and making sure that you get the most value for the company and that you leave a great legacy behind. And so I think if you're at that point, you need to plan on it being about a 2-year process, because there's a lot that goes into the sale process, but there's even more that goes into being ready to sell.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we want to talk about right now. It's like, hey, what does that look like? How do we unlock that?
Yeah. Yeah, let's start. So are there certain things a business owner should look at when it comes to getting ready to sell?
Yeah, obviously, I'm sure everyone expects me to go to the financials, and that's where I am going to go, is the financials. But the question, it's more than just having a clean set of books, right? So you need to be able to have financials that tell a story of your company,
Mhm.
right? And what is that story? That's what we were talking about last time. Like, what is your company? Like, are you a company that's been around for 20 years and is, going to be needed for the next 80 years? And you weather storms well. There's no real highs or lows. You always have super healthy bottom line. You got 3 to 6% growth year over year. If that's your story, that's your story. Let's make sure we tell it right, right? If you're a company that has this incredible brand, right? Like, we want to make sure that everything reflects that in the story. If we even talked about like, you guys are awesome because you have the best location in town and you've got the best name in town. Great. Let's make sure that the story tells that. If you're, the new kid on the block, this high growth, awesome. Let's tell that story. But you got to make sure that your financials correctly reflect the story that you're going to tell, because you're selling a dream, right? Like, you're selling, someone else is going to buy your baby, your dream, and they're going to make it their dream. And so they want to know, like, great, the financials are real. I believe in them, but also, where's this company going? What can I expect? And it's easier said than done, right? Because a lot of this you might not even know. And a lot of times you haven't even taken time to really evaluate and say, hey, what is our sexy story? What's my value proposition? That's what you really want to do. I would start with, getting your books clean. And, a lot of you probably are, squirming in your seat right now, because that's not necessarily easy to do. But the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago or today, right? So it's time to get your books in order. And you might say, well, Devin, I do, I commingle my funds, I have, a boat in there. I've got some other stuff in there. Okay, well, great.
Mhm.
Let's make sure that those are easily, that we can denote those easily in the financials.
Mhm.
You say, well, I overpay myself. Okay, great. Let's figure out, if you pay yourself $500,000 and, if someone wants to replace you, it should only be 150,000 or whatever. Let's put that in there, right?
Mhm.
Let's make sure that we really clean the books up, right?
Mhm.
Make sure that at the end of the day, when you hand something over to somebody with a few, notations,
Yeah.
they're going to understand your actual profitability.
Mhm.
So that's a great place to start. Second thing is you're going to want to spend some time really cleaning up your expenses. Some things I would tell you to look at is, where your office is located. Are you an office that like, hey, you've been playing around with going remote forever?
Mhm.
And if you know that you're able to do that, it's just been, a painful process.
Yeah.
Well, by golly, make it happen.
Cut the expenses where you can cut them, where maybe you've talked about it,
Yeah.
but it's just been placed on the back
Yeah.
burner. Now's the time to actually do those things.
Yeah, think about it. Think if you're paying 20 grand a month all in on your rent, right?
Mhm.
Because you got rent, you got, your cams, you got all of your electricity, you've got your internet, you got all these different things. Let's say it's 20 grand a month, right? If you go to a seller and you say, oh, well, hey, you can go remote and save that 20 grand, they're gonna be like, well, why didn't you do it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you want me to take that risk, and you're like, no, it won't be hard at all. Okay, well then you should have done it, right? If
Mhm.
you wanted me to give you credit for that, prove it, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
So again, this is why it's like a couple year process, right? We were like, oh my gosh, this is a huge expense. I could go
Mhm.
remote and put $250,000 back on the bottom line. Well, you got 2 years to make it happen. When's your lease expire?
Mhm.
Start planning those things. Maybe you get $250,000 on your bottom line. Great,
Mhm.
do that, right?
Mhm.
And then you go, well, also, now that you mention it, I've had my uncle work for me for the last 20 years, and he's at a point in his life where he'd really like to retire, and honestly, he's the crazy uncle, right? And we're kind of way overpaying him to do the job that he's doing, but I love my uncle, right? And so we pay him, $120,000 a year, but the job's really only 60 grand, or
Mhm.
maybe even there is no, like, we don't even need that, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, great. Well, I'm not telling you to throw your uncle out on his ear, but like, hey, maybe put together a nice little severance and let's get him out of the company. So like the true profitability is there. And then there's, some stuff that if you look through and go, you know what, I really do need to clean up my org chart. I have some people that have been unproductive. I have some vendors that are overpaying me or overcharging me. I haven't negotiated, XYZ for a long time. You need to do a price increase, right? Like all of these things that you've kind of been waiting on, like you add up, let's say you save $250,000 in rent. You do a price increase that puts, in your, let's say you're a $10 million company. You do a price increase that adds another $500,000 to the bottom line. That's $750,000. You have some dead weight here and there that you kind of like, over time, you kind of give them severance and you get them out, right? Now you're talking literally $1 million that you just push to the bottom line. Now you say, well, yeah, can't I tell the buyer that story? Sure, you can tell the buyer the story, whether they believe you or not.
Mhm.
And they're going to, but like, it's much better if you already did it, right? Like,
Mhm.
if you did it over the course of this 2 years and you put $1 million back on the bottom line just by cleaning some stuff up and you showed that your top line held,
Uh-huh.
right? Like when you
Yeah.
made these changes, like, cause they're going to want to know, hey, when you go remote, does your top line hold?
Mhm.
So you do this over the course of some time, and all of a sudden you're adding that value, and then you have to like let it bake for a little bit.
Mhm.
It can't be 1 month, it can't be 1 quarter.
Yeah.
It's got to bake for a little while so people believe it.
Mhm.
And so this is what I would encourage you to. This again, why sometimes just the whole process, whether the process could get done in 90 days or not, isn't the question. The question is, what should you do? Because all of these different things probably take the better part of 2 years.
Yeah. So let's go back to telling the story because I really like that idea. Take us back to when you sold your company, the first company you sold.
Yep.
What was the story you decided on,
Yeah.
and how did you go about making that or highlighting that story?
I'm gonna take a walk down memory lane here,
Yeah.
but this was a super fun time in my life, and I was ready to go on to the next phase of my life, but I knew that the company had more to offer, more to
Mhm.
give, and so the story that we had was look at this, crazy growth, year over year, crazy growth. We met the rule of 40s. I didn't know what that meant at the time.
Mhm.
I'll talk about
Yeah,
that
I
a
was
little
gonna
bit.
say
Yeah.
I'm not aware of the
Yeah.
Rule of 40, so you'll have to tell us about that.
Yeah, I'll talk about it a little bit later here,
Okay.
but we met the rule of 40s. Again, I didn't know we did.
Uh-huh.
But, and so we had this high growth company, met the rule of 40s, year over year growth, compounded, and there was a really that was nice.
Mhm.
But what the story that I had to tell on top of that was, hey, look we're not even doing all the projects that I want to do,
Mhm.
right? And this is a great story to tell. Private equity in particular loves to hear this story because I'm like, hey, we're doing awesome, but I'm just me, myself, and I.
Mhm.
Like, I have people that work for me, but they're just people that I've raised up. I don't know what a really great CFO looks like. I don't know what a really great CRO looks like. I don't know what a really great CMO looks like. If you can help me find these people and build out these other departments, we can do more. And by the way, I have 6 different product ideas that I haven't even executed on yet
Mhm.
because I don't have the people, the resources, the know-how. And at the end of the day, the profit that I have today is going to put braces on my kids,
Mhm.
right? So I'm having to reinvest all of my money in the company.
Yeah.
Whereas a private equity, if you guys come in, we can run this thing totally different.
Mhm.
We'll just reinvest back in the company. And this great growth that we've had, wow, it can go exponential
Yeah.
because we'll have more people, we'll be reinvesting, we'll have more product lines, all of these different ideas. And private equity loves that. That's
Mhm.
what they want to know. How can I unlock opportunity? And that was a story that we had to tell.
Mhm. So if you remember, what were some of the decisions you had to make, whether it be expenses or cleanup or anything that you had to do before you started extending out to private equity?
Yeah. What I needed to do in my company was I had to prove that that it could work without me.
Okay.
And so as much as they want to hear all these other stories, they also because I told them they're like, "Well, great. Do you want to stick around?" And I said, "No."
Mhm.
I don't because it's not I want to still own part of the company, but I don't want to stick around because I have other things that I want to do.
Mhm.
So, and I knew that again, I knew who the buyer's potential would be. I knew my company, and I had 2 years to work on this,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So I was able to get people in place and prove that, hey, whether I leave and a new CEO comes in,
Mhm.
this place doesn't need me. It's already operating. And by the way, maybe a new CEO will even be better than me.
Mhm.
Right. And so that was what I really had to work on. And it took a while to kind of be able to show that I had a developed org structure
Mhm.
that was sustainable, that people had real roles and real responsibilities and were competent and could
Mhm.
do, things without me.
Yeah.
Right. And so that when, that one person is removed, you can just replace them with another person. So that was the big thing that I personally needed to work on over those couple years.
Okay. You said, obviously, you mentioned private equity. That was one of the sales we talked about last week, or types of sales. I assume there's a different story you'd want to tell for any one of these
Mhm.
types of sales, correct?
I,
So
yeah.
let's go through that. Do you want to start with private equity?
Let's come back to that one
Okay.
because I think that one's a little more complicated.
Okay.
So let's talk about some of the other ones where you're selling to a private individual,
Okay.
you know, key employee, son-in-law,
Mhm.
somebody like that. Um, they and you, because remember in this scenario, that buyer probably isn't sitting on the cash
Yeah.
to pay you what that company is worth.
Mhm.
So they're going to pay you over time from the profits of the company,
Mhm.
And so if I was you,
Mhm.
I would make darn sure that that company is sustainable
Uh-huh.
and that the people who are buying it that are going to pay you are competent, right?
Mhm.
Because let's say you have someone that says, one person says, "Oh, I'll give you $2 million, for the company, and I'll give you $200,000 up front." Another person comes in and says, I'll give you $4 million and I'll give you $200,000 up front. You're getting $200,000 up front, and you're going to be like, well, I'm going to go with the person that's going to give me $4 million, not the person that's going to give me $2 million.
Yeah.
Right. But that $4 million, what if he's a moron? Right.
Yeah.
Right. What?
Yeah. You can't do it.
Absolutely. Or like just treats people like crap. Right. Like, and runs the company into the ground. It doesn't matter if he said he was going to give you $40 million.
Yeah.
That company's going to be out of business and you're not going to get your money.
Mm-hmm.
So like you really want to make sure that this company is set up for the smoothest transition ever, right? So like I would want that buyer to be involved. I would want to work with them over time. I would want to have kind of like, hey, I'm going to give you a portion of this, but if this goes wrong, I can buy you back out, right? Like,
so you're vetting the buyer as just as much as the offer itself.
Yeah, because the buyer is tied to the offer, right? Like you're not going to get your money unless you know for certain that this is going to work. So, being able to construct the deal and the offer so that, like I said, if something goes south, the company doesn't collapse, you can take it back over, without them having destroyed it. So, it's super important to make sure that company is stable, that the people that are there are going to like the buyer. They're going to be happy with the buyer, that the minute you walk out the door, all the employees don't leave and that buyer's left with nothing, that the customers don't leave because they only like it because they play golf with you and you've overcharged them for the last 10 years, but they like you, right? But as soon as you're gone, they're going to be like, I'm out, right? I'm going to shop them. So like that's what you need to do in that company is really make sure that it's sustainable. And I would say that's true with the ESOP as well, right? Because same scenario, the buyer is going to be the company, right? And you got to make sure that company is sustainable. The nice thing about ESOP is it is, steps along the way. Like very rarely you're going to be cash out immediately. So you kind of have to be involved for a while oftentimes to make something like that happen. So I think those are important, making sure that you have a very stable company when you exit.
What's next? What's another sale?
A competitor. So this one is the story you want to tell here. And I think competitors are great buyers, right? And you can get competitors to buy you at any level. You can get a competitor to buy you when you're a $2 million company. You can get a competitor to buy you when you're a $2 billion company, right? Like competitors will buy you any way.
Any type of company, any type of value,
Absolutely.
whatever it is. Okay.
So and competitors will sometimes pay the top dollar, right, for you because you have something they want. And so what you need to do, your story, sure, they want to buy like nice financials, right? But there's a reason why competitors want you. And so you have to look very menacing, right, to that competitor, right? Like either A, they want a certain product and you need to make that product like super sexy and lots of patents around it, something that they like are just salivating, like if I could just get that, right?
Yeah.
Customers that they want, markets that they're in, threats to their competition. Like maybe you want to steal some of their customers and you go lowball on the price just because you want to be more threatening to the competitor and more of a reason for them to take you out.
Okay.
And to pay top dollar, right? And so your competitive piece has to be like, why do you want me out? Like you want one of those things that I just listed or a myriad of other things, right? Like, but something that makes them go, I've got to get rid of these people and I want what they have, right? So the competitive story can be quite compelling. But again, it doesn't just happen, right? Like you got to be thoughtful behind all of this. Like I said, like, do you want to actually go in lower pricing? Do you want to enter this market because it's going to be threatening? All of these things are big questions to ask and they take time to execute, right? And time for the competitor to feel your pain. Like right now in one of my companies, we intentionally poke a couple competitors, right? Like we're poking at them, right?
Yeah.
And so we want like that friction. We want them to know who we are,
How do you go about poking at them?
Number one, they need to feel the impact, right? They need to feel the impact either in their customer base or in a certain geography or in a certain market. Like,
Mhm.
let's say they do really well in the enterprise space,
Mhm.
but they don't do well in the SMB space. You want to show that you're the best in the SMB space. And if only they could have you, if
Yeah.
only they could have you, then they don't enterprise and SMB. Or if you're both in the enterprise space, you need to be taking their market share,
Mhm.
right? Like you need to be able to show there's not room in this town for the two of
Yeah.
us. You know what I mean? Like,
So if you've identified as I think my business would be I think I want to sell to a competitor, you really have to do a evaluation on who your competitors are, where their challenges are, or where's the low hanging fruit that you could take from them
yep.
to
And,
do it
and
right.
what you have that they want,
Mhm.
a lot of times this is, you have a certain technology or you have a certain um, product or
Mhm.
something that's like, oh, they envy,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, I want that, and I will
Mhm.
pay top dollar." They're gonna see more value than anybody else in it,
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
competitors are great buyers,
Okay.
So, and again, it doesn't matter how big and small you are, right? Like,
Everybody's got a
yeah,
competitor.
you're a dry cleaner, and the dry cleaner opens up in the same, strip mall as you.
Yeah.
The person who's gonna want that to buy you the most is that other dry cleaner, right?
Mhm. Yep.
So, um, the next is where we're gonna go like search fund.
Okay.
Again, we're starting to move up the ladder here a little bit. So, a search fund. Actually, before I go there, we'll talk about business brokers, right?
Okay.
So, let's say you're a smaller company, you're a service company. Business broker is going. They're going to be selling you. This is smaller. Maybe service industries less than $5 million.
Business broker as a reminder that or remind me,
Yeah.
that was like a uh, s- small service,
Mm.
almost real estate agent. So
Yeah.
they're going to help you with some stuff,
Yep.
but not the full service of everything you need to do, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. This is you're a smaller company. You don't have a buyer to
Mhm.
go to that you don't have a competitor that you think would be interested. You don't have a family member, key employee, anything like that. It's not really it's not really someone that would not really a company you could do an ESOP on.
Mhm.
It's like you're selling a franchise. You're
Mhm.
selling a a service business for under $5 million. This is again, I would say, what they want to know again is can it run without you,
Mhm.
and what's the upside, right?
Okay.
Like, am I buying this because it's uh, uh, a Subway, a subs, sub sandwich shop.
Mhm.
It's been here for 20 years. You know, it's going to continue being for 20 years. Very loyal customer base,
Mhm.
and everyone knows Gino's subs, right?
Mhm.
It's like whether and even if Gino's not there anymore, it's still going to be Gino's subs and it's going
Mhm.
to work. And by the way, the rent's not going to go through the roof here in 3 years where all of a sudden I can't afford it and it eats all my
Mhm.
profitability. They just want to know, like, what am I buying? Is it nice and solid?
Stable, like there's not going to be drastic
Absolutely.
changes in the
Yep.
next couple of
Yeah.
years.
Or I look at it and go, I like Gino's subs. What if I bought Gino's subs and I could do this and I could open up a Gino subs on the other side of town?
Mhm.
So typically this is just they're normal buyers, it's family run. So you got to be able to show stability and hopefully the person that sees it has vision.
Mhm.
You're probably not going to get top dollar, but that's okay. There's
Mhm.
still, like I said, you have to plan on exiting, and it's much better to exit before you lose your will to work,
Yeah.
because at that point, then, it's a melting ice cube that you're trying to sell.
This may be more complicated than I think, but with the family member or the first sale, you're vetting the person because you're gonna have your uh profits paid out over a period of time. Would that be the same with the last two that we talked about, or it's a little less of a concern?
Most likely not, right?
Okay.
Like, you're more trying to get out as quick as you can.
Mhm.
And, yeah, I think in that scenario, it's more of like you're going to get as much cash as you can up front, short little time horizon where they
Mhm.
pay you out, and I think you're looking for more of a quick turnaround. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Um, the next is search fund.
Okay.
So again, kind of going up the ladder. So, you're a decent sized company. You have people, a search fund, to refresh everyone's memory, is, someone who is entrepreneurial or done something entrepreneurial before, maybe hasn't had their big win, their big cash out yet. Or there's someone that, people see tons of value and upside in. They think they're a great leader. They've got a great pedigree. These people are from, big name universities with their masters. They've worked in the business world for 3 or 4 years. And what they've done is they've gone and raised a bunch of money to go buy a company.
Mm-hmm.
And they're reaching out directly to you saying, hey, I want to buy your company and run it, and I've got the cash to buy it,
Uh-huh.
right? So typically it comes like, this is walk away money, right?
Okay.
Like, you're going to say, hey, whether you fail or succeed, I'm less worried about it because I'm probably cashing out and you're
Mhm.
taking over. They won't necessarily pay top dollar for you because they are typically looking to buy something slightly undervalued.
Okay.
But you can do it without a business broker. You can do it without an investment banker. You can do it, yourself, as long as you feel comfortable with the valuation. And this person is literally going to come, give you a lump sum of money. You're going to walk away and they're going to take over. What that person wants to see is, hey, like, honestly, what they're looking for is they kind of want to think that they can do a better job than you can,
Mhm.
right? And so in this scenario, you want to show them, hey, I've got a great company, but I'm not that good. I bet you're better,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, I'm kind of dumbing it down, right?
Yeah.
But like, you want to be able to say like, well, geez, I've just been doing this and I'm self-funded, and
Mhm.
my wife does the books, and my uncle is the chief of sales, and my neighbor who I like across the street is the head of operations.
Mhm.
And they look and go, well, golly gee, if these guys did it and they got it to 5 million or they got it to 10 million, what
Yeah.
if I came in? Because I'm really smart and I've got all this money, and
Mhm.
I'm going to be able to drive this from 10 million to 50 million.
Mhm.
And good on them if they do, right? But like, that's kind of when you want to show there in the search fund is like, hey, I've got something great, but I think you can do better than I can.
Mhm.
And that's the story that you want to kind of craft for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's next then?
So now we're kind of going up to, private equity. So venture capital is different than private equity. Venture capital is early stage money, sometimes even pre-revenue money.
Okay.
But in this scenario, you've got a business, so at this point you probably hire an investment banker. It's a big enough company that you're going to have different folks interested, like private equity, again, competitors, and maybe eventually at some point, and going public or an IPO. But you would involve an investment banker, and if private equity in particular is looking at your company, what they're doing is thinking of it as house flippers. Okay.
Okay.
So private equity, they raise money to buy companies to fix them up and flip them.
Mhm.
And I use fix it up implying that something's wrong. But it's like more of what they're looking at is they want to buy a house in a nice neighborhood that they're like, ooh, I think I can
They
put,
see value in it.
yeah, they like,
Mhm.
I bet you if I put, if I make it a 5-car garage instead of a 2-car garage, I put an extra story on top of this,
Mhm.
and I put a pool in the backyard, I bet you I can sell this for 5 times
Mhm.
what I put into it. And I say that because that's what they're looking to do. They want to flip private equity once in and out in 3 to 5 years, and they're looking for 5x their money.
Okay.
Long time is 7 years, but typically 3 to 5 is what they're hoping for, and 5 times their money.
Mhm.
And what they'll do is they'll pay you cash. They'll bring in, they'll get loans. So they put as much money in as possible. They leverage it as much as possible. And then you can either stay there and work with them.
Mhm.
You can leave, walk away completely, or you can walk away but still own a portion.
Okay.
But private equity, what they want to know is is this a growth company?
Mhm.
And what kind of a growth company? So earlier I mentioned the rule of
Yes.
40s.
Yes.
Growth companies are often, their financials can look strange, right? Like, we're killing it. We haven't made any profit, but we're killing it, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, how do you know you're killing it? Well, private equity in particular gets very excited when your top line's growing like crazy, right?
Okay.
And what they want to know, so let's say you only have a bottom line of 5%, but your top line is 40% growth year over year, right? So you would add 40 and 5 it equals 45. So you've exceeded the rule of 40s.
Okay.
So the magic number is 40,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's not just one quarter. And so don't get too excited if you're watching this. They're smart buyers, right? They want to see that your company year over year is kind of hitting this rule of 40s, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden, if you're hitting the rule of 40s, you got a lot of people interested.
Okay.
Okay. The second thing is your CLTV to CAC. So customer lifetime value divided by your cost of customer acquisition. Okay. And the reason why this is so important is they're all very smart, right? Like they look at companies and go, holy cow, this company's hitting the rule of 40s. And if I spend $1, because that's what customer cost of your CAC is, if I spend $1, I can spend $1 today and I can make $7 off of that $1. The customer lifetime value divided by your cost of customer acquisition. If I spend $1 and I make $7, that's super sexy.
Yeah.
Like they want that,
Yeah.
right? Because guess what? They have a lot of dollars, right?
Yeah.
And they're going, oh my gosh, this is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I've got this company hitting the rule of 40s. If I go invest in this and I drive sales, I bring in more product, they've got this really great machine, they've got this great company, I'm going to pour more money in so that I can put, $5 million in and get $300 or $35 million in values and out. And so typically what they want is north of 5 CLTV to CAC. That's kind of what they're going for. The greater the CLTV to CAC, the more they're willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
Because the more they see that they can drive it.
But those two need to be combined like that with rule of 40, or would it be a situation where, hey, maybe our CLTV to CAC is a little bit lower, but we're hitting the 40 and someone might be interested?
They're kind of they both work together. It'd be really hard to hit the rule of 40s if you don't have a strong CLTV to CAC.
Okay.
But it's kind of two ways of looking at growth, right? But rule of 40s shows, hey, even though necessarily we're not super profitable, this is still a healthy company because we're reinvesting all our money in our growth. CLTV to CAC is like, okay, this shows like if we throw money in, what can we expect to get out? And so it gives them kind of some guardrails to say, this type of company meets our parameters. And they're kind of agnostic for the most part. Like, some of them say, oh, well, we just work in X space. And there's some truth to that, right? Like some of them do focus in various spaces, but there's private equity for everything, right? So some private equity is interested in your space and they're interested in the high growth companies in your space. And a lot of times what they do as well is they look and say, not only can we grow this organically because it's got great CLTV to CAC and it hits the rule of 40s, we're smart guys and smart gals, and we're going to go and buy other companies with this, right? And this is going to be our platform company, or maybe they're buying you to put you underneath something else, right? And then all of a sudden, guess what? They put you underneath something else, and then they cut all the expenses, right? They, frankly, fire half your staff and get rid of a bunch of overhead, and they combine the two, and now it's worth more. And so private equity, they want to know what the story is. What's our growth story? We got great CLTV to CAC, rule of 40s. Hey, we could buy 3 of our competitors. And I haven't even done this product line yet. And they're going, I have to have this company.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But you have to have that story read and convincingly to be able to tell it.
Yeah. And it's got to be, going back to the growth, I assume you can't just have 2 good quarters of growth and sell your company for, it's got to be sustained growth that you can say, this wasn't a one-off. This wasn't a, crazy thing that everybody all of a sudden needed this one item for one quarter. It wasn't
the COVID bounce.
Yes,
it wasn't something like that, or it wasn't, they're going to look at, they're super smart people. They're going to look at your customer base. They're going to look at your retention. They're going to look at so much, right? They're going to call your competitors. They're going to call your customers. They're going to call the people that left you. They're going to call the people that are they're very thorough. At least the good ones are. And they're going to go deep, deep, deep in your books, right? Like they're going to make sure that all your numbers add up, make sense. And it doesn't mean that, they're going to walk away from the deal because, they oftentimes are looking for family-owned companies that want to go to that next level. And so they understand that, listen, we're doing the best we can, but, me and my wife do our books together, right? Like that, I don't have an accounting degree, right? So they're not going to be like, well, we're walking away from this because you screwed this up or this quarter doesn't matter. That's not what they're there for, right? they're there. They want to find companies that are going to grow. And also, they're not terribly afraid of the skeletons in the closet because, again, they know what they're buying, right? They know there's that oftentimes these are companies that started 15 years ago with, like myself, with bootstrapping it, doing everything they can to grow it. And you know that you don't do things perfect along the way. As a matter of fact, that's part of your story. Like, hey, you could probably help me do better, right? And they get excited about that because they're like, this is what we're looking for.
Any other sales that we've missed?
Those are pretty much it. Like, you're going to go, once you kind of get up there higher, like when private equity comes in, the story is maybe someday we can take this public, or after 3 to 5 years, you can sell this, we'll sell, and you'll get a second bite of the apple, and then another set of buyers come in. But the process remains fairly the same. And what's funny is, actually, the further you go, the easier it gets, right? Because private equity, buys you, and now private equity has been 5 years and they've made 5x on their money and they went out. Well, guess what? Along the way, you have to have audited financials. You've never had audited financials before. So when the next group of buyers comes in, it's more like, oh, here's your packet, right? And like the vetting process goes from like taking months and months and months to like, yeah, we got everything we need. We're going to do a few things, have a few board calls, ask you some hard questions here and there, poke and prod at a little different things, but like you could close in 90 days, the second round and the third round. And as it goes, it becomes more and more sophisticated and actually easier the bigger it gets in some ways.
Is there a point in time then, as you're a business owner, you're adding value, you're, getting your story ready? How do you know when now's the time? I've done everything I can, because I imagine you could get into a loop where you're like, a little bit more, we're not ready yet.
It's a great question. A wise person told me that you never go broke walking away with money in your pocket. You always go broke trying to take the last chip off the table. It's like when you're in Vegas, that person, you go, hey, I'm up. I'm going to walk away from the table. Yeah, you won, right? Versus, no, I've got to win it all, right? Like I got to get everything back, or I got to, like, there's never, like, the people, and I say this, I use that analogy because it's the people that like try to get the timing perfect so they could get that one extra quarter point on the multiple. Right? When really at the end of the day, very sophisticated buyers, like especially at the higher level, and to try to time the market, the interest rates aren't right, or last year or something, somebody sold for 6x and I'm only getting 5.5x. So I want to hold on for 2 more years. Well, that's 2 more years of your life, right? There's also 2 more years that you could have taken and invested that money and done something else, right? So I'm not telling you not to plan it out, but I think it more is what's right for you. What's right for the company. When's the right transition? Now, in my company, there was some obvious, I kind of knew what would be a good year, what would be a bad year. I kind of knew like, hey, multiples are pretty good right now. And at the end of the day, I'm like, good enough, right? Now, there's definitely times, like for right now, I would say the last 2 years, if you cannot sell your company the last 2 years, you shouldn't have, right? Because that market kind of dried up a lot because interest rates went high. But I'm not the people that did, they're not like in the poorhouse, if you know what I mean, right? Like, did they get maybe 20% less than they could have? Sure. But also, you don't know what's going to happen to taxes. You don't know where the economy's going. Like I said, I think the people that get overly hung up on like, I have to get the absolute highest value at this particular time that's ever happened in the history of the market, like those are the people that are going to go broke, right? You're going to just try to time it, work too hard, over-negotiate, and you're going to lose a deal. That said, be smart.
Trust yourself, trust what you know, trust what got you to that place in the first place.
And that's why I said, that's why like it is kind of a 2-year process, because you're going to see some stuff happen over those 2 years that really might make you change your mind. It might make you pause for 1 more year. But it's probably more of your internal stuff than it is external factors.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a good place to
Yeah.
stop, because I think the next step here is now we're going to be getting ready to assemble the team for the sale. And that'll be another part.
Yeah, during this process, during this 2 years, I learned more about business than I ever did running it, certainly in college or anything like that. But this is so good. And I've said this in the first episode, and I'll reiterate it on this episode. Just doing this process will make your business better, you know? And so I highly encourage people to understand this. And I'm not saying, go through the entire exercise, but when you begin thinking this way and acting this way and running your business in this way, you really unlock, you create the best business possible, regardless if you sell or not.
It's good.
Great. Awesome. Well, we look forward to our next one, and we'll see you in a week.